What's up? It's Marco, Sage of Soccer, and good news for the U.S. men's national team, as has officially been announced that the USA is hosting the Copa America. Great news that this competition will be expanded to include us. It's not a merger. I saw people say this, like North America and South America merging into like one new confederation. It's not that, not yet at least. But it's great news that CONCACAF teams will be participating at this tournament. But the USA actually isn't qualified just yet. There will be 6 teams from CONCACAF participating in the Copa America, along with the 10 teams from South America, and the 6 teams will be determined by the CONCACAF Nations League for the 2023-2024 Nations League, which is the one after this current one. And I'm not exactly sure how this will work with 6 teams being in because there are like 4 groups of 3 right now. So maybe it's the 4 group winners plus the best second place teams. Maybe the second place teams have an additional tournament or group stage, or maybe the format is just repurposed to like 3 groups of 4 and then the top 2 teams advance. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We're going to be winning our group. Like, if we don't do that, things are going horribly wrong. But I want to mention that we're not qualified just yet, and we will have to go through a qualification process, but I think it's pretty much a given. This is obviously great news for the U.S. in terms of our preparation for the World Cup. Being involved in the Copa America not only gives us a real qualifying process to help us prepare some good competitive games and action against some of the top teams in the world, all of which will help us really gauge where we are ahead of the tournament, give us like show us what we need to do to win at that top level because Argentina won the Copa America, then they took that momentum into winning the World Cup. And I think just overall, it's a great thing for us. And I think it's kind of fun to talk about our expectations heading into the Copa America. It's a bit tough to gauge because obviously, if we get unlucky with the draw and like Brazil's in our group and then we have to face Argentina in the quarters, like we go in the quarters. Like it's unfortunate, but that could just happen. But I want to talk about like how our squad looks like it should do, what our expectations should be, because I think we have a very interesting team leading into this tournament. In terms of the CONCACAF teams, I think we're pretty much the best one. We were the only team to advance out of the World Cup. We recently won the Nations League, which was every team going at it. We even won the Gold Cup, though no team really tried too hard with that one. So I don't think we can judge it too much. But I think we're pretty clearly the best squad in terms of both results and talent. Now, Mexico, they are obviously our main rival in CONCACAF, but I think they are really falling off. And I think for not a long time, but a short period, they're only going to be getting worse before they get better. Like they're obviously going to have a lot of talent coming through. They always do, but just at the current moment with their older players starting to fall off, retire, get worse, and their young prospects really aren't that great, especially when looking around at how much the region has progressed. I'm not too worried about facing Mexico. They'll obviously be a challenge if we play them, but much less so than in recent times. Then we have Canada, who are advancing a lot. They obviously have some star power in Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David, arguably the 2 best players in the region. Alphonso Davies is probably unarguably the best, and depending on where you rate Keylor Navas. And I think that they are a really good team that's on the rise. Like with Davies, David, Buchanan, their attack is really strong. Have a decent midfield and guys like Eustaquio, Kone's coming through. And then I think their defense is a pretty big weak point, especially since they don't play Davies as a left back. And I just go and compare the squads. Like they do have a good attack, but we have a much stronger midfield, and their defense is really bad for a team at their level. And while they do match up against us pretty well, we didn't get a win against them in qualifying. I think we are the better squad and we shouldn't really be worried about them. And aside from that, like Costa Rica's not who they were a few years ago. And the only other team that I'm even like slightly worried about is Jamaica if they're able to get a couple more dual national commits. Because they do have a couple of good Premier League level players, some good like championship players in there. And like if they really get everything going. I feel like they're a bit of a sleeping giant, but like that's kind of a what if at the moment. And I don't think there's any CONCACAF team that I'm really worried about facing in a knockout round. Then going to South America, and this is the world's second best confederation, and I think that we actually compare pretty well. I mean, when you look through the region top to bottom, starting at the bottom, we're just better than Bolivia or Venezuela, like, kind of no question. And aside from that, I think we're despite them having a good bit of talent and they could give us a challenge like a Costa Rica or like a Jamaica level team, I think we are a better squad than Paraguay. And in addition, there are teams like Chile and Peru, who they've had a couple of really good runs recently. Chile, we saw them winning the Copa America last time we hosted it, and Peru had a couple of good runs to the final, nearly qualified for the World Cup. But they're both very old squads. The Chile golden generation is over. Peru is only going to be getting older, and I think that we should be beating those teams. I think we are better than them, and those are the type of teams that we will need to beat if we want to really do something at the 2026 World Cup and maybe even go on and win it. And I think those are teams that we are better than. After that are the top 5 teams in the region, in my opinion, and strictly talent-wise, it's going to be a very difficult game against all 5 of those teams. Colombia, Ecuador, and Uruguay, I feel like we can compete with in a game that is very even. Then we have Brazil and Argentina, where if we want to get a result, we're going to have to bunker in and just get them on a counter, get a little bit of luck. But I think when you look at like a Uruguay, that's a team that we can defeat. It's going to be like a tough matchup, and they've got some great players. Nunez is only going to improve Valverde. Their defense is really strong, and you just look and there's quality like all around the team. And like even with some of their like non-stars, like having to face a guy like Varela as a right back potentially, that's going to be challenging. And that's going to be a very tough matchup. You look at Ecuador, and I think they're comparable to us, but they're a very young team. They had experience. They're only going to get better. I think they gave the Netherlands a better game than we did. And you just look at Colombia. They didn't qualify, and that's a team maybe we should be beating. But having like a Luis Diaz in that squad, like it's very tough to be able to compete with them. And those games are going to be extremely challenging for us, but it's a great competition, great way to prepare for the World Cup, and those are teams that it's going to be fun to watch us play against. Then there's Brazil and Argentina, and while we'll obviously be underdogs in those games, I don't think it's like impossible to beat either of them. I mean, like obviously very unlikely, but I mean, you look at that Argentina team, and especially if Messi isn't there, like, there are holes in that squad. I mean, I think Dybala probably comes in for Messi. That's honestly not too. It's a drop off and a big one, but Dybala would still probably be the best player on our team. You, I don't think losing Di Maria will be huge for them, especially because he would usually just get injured during tournaments. But that's a huge loss of a player. But aside from that, strong goalkeeper in Martinez, but like they're not full of like world class players. Like they had a lot of guys who were like McAllister playing for Brighton, Martinez for Villa. You had Romero at Tottenham. Like it's not an impossible team to beat, and like I think their fullbacks were kind of inconsistent. Like we could really get at them with our strong wingers, and it's a game where like I don't expect to win if we face them, but it's not like the end of the world. Like I feel like we should look at that Argentina team and just be like, there is like a way for us to succeed. And sure, Messi was Messi at the World Cup, and we don't have that. And we aren't favored to beat them. And I'm just hoping that it won't be like the 4-0 loss that we had against them last time. And then we have Brazil, who I think it is just kind of world class throughout the entire team. Like Allison or Ederson, whoever's in goal, like that's going to be tough. And their center backs, really strong group. There's a possibility Neymar's returning. You've got Vinicius, Gabriel Jesus, Rodrigo, Rafinha. Jeez, like that's a tough matchup, and I don't expect us to win that. I don't expect us. I wouldn't be mad. I'm just hoping that we can give them a pretty good run for, like, give them a good challenge because I think we are improving enough that we can do that. But Brazil and Argentina are not teams I expect to beat right now. So, what should our expectations be for the tournament? And I look at where we were last time in 2016, and I think that reaching the semifinals that year, I think that's something we can do again. Now, obviously, if the draw is really bad for us and we have to face like a Brazil or Argentina in the knockout round, like okay, it is what it is. But I look around like these teams, and considering that we are hosting it, I think that we should be able to get the better of a lot of these teams. And I think semifinals is something that we can realistically expect. And that's the type of result that we need if we want to be able to really make a run at reaching, at doing something at this World Cup, because this is the high level competition that we are going to be facing. And we need to start succeeding against it if we want to really have we want to reach our goals, and our goal is eventually winning a World Cup. And this is a huge step in doing that. So it's going to be a very tough tournament, and I think that we will learn a lot about our squad. I think that semifinals is a realistic expectation, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be really fun to watch. I'm glad we're being able to host this tournament, and we're actually going to have some qualification for a major tournament this cycle, which I didn't expect, but I'll take. Hopefully, it won't be as stressful as the last one. And yeah, that's all I'll talk about. See ya.